Okay, guys, we're getting down the line here. This is part 5 of how to make your own 300 Blackout ammunition from scratch. So I'm going to go over some things that are optional and things that are not optional. Okay, so first of all, we're going to definitely need some gunpowder. I like little gun and 1680. This is some good stuff. We do not need this powder throw here. This is by Lee. It's about 30 bucks. You can get them used for cheaper, but I recommend getting them new just because there might be residual powder from a different manufacturer in there. You don't need the magnifying glass, but for people with like low vision, this is definitely helpful, and you can kind of see inside the cases. But we'll set that aside because I don't have low vision. We may or may not need a funnel depending on our choice of powder measure. And we do not need a case tray, or I keep my the cases that pistol cartridge factory pistol cartridges come in, and rifle cartridges, just so I can separate my homemade ammunition better. There's no point in throwing this stuff away. This stuff will last a lifetime, and I see it as waste when people throw that kind of stuff away. We're definitely going to need a scale, a high quality digital scale of some sort, and a little powder tray. And again, depending on our method of powder measurement, we're going to need a scooper or something like that. And we're going to need somewhere to put our completed rounds. This can also double as some place to put our in between the next step rounds, because there is one more step after this for certain guns. So this could be the last step for some people if they haven't belled their cases out. So if they have belled their cases out, the next step is pretty essential. But so this is the stuff we're going to need. We're also going to, of course, need the same shell holder we've been using for the entirety of the little video series. That big case back there is actually, I have that there for a reason. I will show you in a moment. Actually, I'll show you right now. I'll just knock everything down here. This is advertised as a universal loading tray, and I'm not sure where this would fit. Anyway, that's that. And I'm just driving home that not everything is universal. That says it's universal. And this is just a sizer. I call them sizers, just so I can quickly or visually identify if I'm getting close to the overall length I'm looking for. Do keep in mind that if you change your projectiles, your overall length will change depending on like your feeding and stuff. And it is helpful in this part of the stage to actually have a magazine of some sort on hand to test to see if your rounds fit in there without a magazine modification, or perhaps maybe sorry about the noise. Just to test your fit, and then to see if you possibly need to modify your magazine. And I have a video tutorial on modifying Magpool magazines for 300 Blackout. So definitely give that a look. If it's in the playlist, if you're a subscriber for 300 Blackout. Anyway, so these are some things that you're going to need. And so before we get started, let's go over some warnings. You, as the watcher, cannot take anything I say here in terms of powder measurement, overall length, any of that kind of stuff as gospel. I mean, this is not a video that to replicate what I do. Every single gun is its own beast, and you need to see what your particular gun likes in terms of gunpowder choice, in terms of overall length, in terms of what projectiles you're going to use, if you're going to use jacketed or hard cast lead, what your case is like, what your case overall length, your COAL, case overall length should be. Like, all that stuff is dependent on your gun, your barrel, your chamber, your magazines, A lot of different factors. So, and your, if you're recoil sensitive, maybe you need to reduce your loads, but you need to do that safely, because there is such a thing as a detonation. It doesn't happen often, and with most powders, it might not be an issue, but it is a possibility that if you underload a case too much and there's too much free space, when it's sitting like this in the gun or a little bit angled down, when the primer is struck, it's possible for like the sort of spark to go over and then ignite all the powder at once and cause overpressure. And if anything, it's just a precaution. And there's a lot of debate on whether that's a myth or not, or how actually possible it is. But again, do your own research on that kind of stuff. This is not a video for you need to learn certain things on your own and what's best for your particular gun. So this marker will be used if we are to, I'm going to show you how to do this, but if we're working up a load. That's why I have these separated like this. If we're working up a load, I like to do 5, sometimes 10 when I'm more confident in a load. 5 at a time. I do 5 because I want to test for multiple things. I want to test for bolt hold open on the last round. I want to test for feeding, and I want to test for accuracy and things like that. So I usually do around 5 per charge. So and I do it like in steps. Like, so if the starting load is, for instance, 7 grains for like some subsonics, I'll go from 7 and I'll kind of experiment. I'll go to 7 and then I'll kind of divide, do a little bit of math here to, and you find your maximum load as well, like with your load data that, your chosen load data for your powder. You do the starting load and the max load and then kind of work your way in between. So sometimes I'll do like a 0.5 increments. So I'll do like 7, 7.5, 8, something like that. And then depending on which one my gun likes the best, or if it's none of them, I'll continue on and try to find what it likes, or change my gun to, fit my load. But, you want to do it in steps, and like once you get closer, you can do smaller increments. Like, so the next loading, if I found 7.5 works, then I'll do, 7.4 and, 7.3 and 7.6, and then I'll write on each individual case with a permanent marker, such as a Sharpie, and just so when they eject, I can find them later, and or right then, and see if there's any signs of overpressure, such as the primer, becoming, loose from the primer pocket, or the dent in the primer is not as irregular, stuff like that, or the case has some kind of damage on it. I can see that, and it might be related to the charge, it might be related to the powder choice. I can see all that later when I inspect my rounds. So that is something I recommend. And I'm not sure if I went over this, but this is the Lee die, and this is actually an RCBS ring here, and I've put a little bit of a little piece of plastic underneath the set screw so it won't damage the threads, and I can tighten the hell out of the set screw here without worrying about dinging up the threads. So here we go. Let's start this. Actually, before we start, I do want to go over a few more things. I'm trying to get rid of not get rid of, but I'm trying to go over some of the safety things. You want to make sure your digital scale is set to grains. It can be set to G for grams, and you could get some confusion. And make sure it's set to grains. If you have this particular powder throw by Lee, you need to take a few things into account. One, you need to run an entire pound of your chosen powder through this, just to kind of get the graphite in the system to lubricate it. So it's a dry lubricant, and the graphite is actually in gunpowder, so it can. Excuse my voice, I'm getting kind of tired. But you need to make sure and run at least a pound through this before it'll feed more consistently. So like some static electricity can build up if from the factory to your house, for instance. And then if you try to do a powder charge, you'll be like, okay, cool, I'm close to where my powder charge should be. I'm confident. I'm gonna start filling up my cases. Each case that you filled up might be enough of a difference to cause some problems with feeding your gun, or maybe even some pressure signs, that, or maybe even your gun blows up. You know, it's highly unlikely, but there are precautions that you should take. This is the adjustment area here, and this needs to be relatively tight. And also, one thing to mention is, depending on your powder choice, this is a very small type of powder, and the powder actually leaks out of the side here on some of the smaller powders. So, and I'll show you that when we get to loading with it. One of the cool things about Lee die sets is they include for your chosen cartridge, it shows some load data, you know, for the different types of powders and the overall lengths, and you know, starting loads and max loads and all that kind of stuff. So it's cool that Lee actually includes this stuff. Just wanted to put that in there as a little side note. Keep in mind when you're working with ammunition, anything to do with lead, gunpowder, all that kind of stuff, there are harmful metals and chemicals, all that good stuff. And you want to make sure and wash your hands if you're working with bare hands. So I work with bare hands. I don't like working with gloves, so I like to be able to feel what I'm doing. I think it's more important than, you know, the hand exposure. But there have been cases where lead can absorb through your skin, and it's not like as big of a deal for adults as it is for children, and children really shouldn't be reloading in the first place. But maybe if you're teaching your child to reload, which I wouldn't oppose to, but you know, you make sure it's under supervision, adult supervision. You want to make sure they wash their hands or wear gloves, and you know, so just to be safe, and make sure and don't eat directly afterwards. First of all, let's set up our Lee press here. We're going to need our shell holder. This is a number 4 Lee shell holder. Same one we've been using throughout the series, of course. This is a Lee bullet seating die. Let me just screw that on in. Now, I'm not going to readjust this ring because I have it set for how I like it, but I will show you. And I do bypass this detent. And if I didn't show you in my past video, you can see right there that I push in the detent and tighten it down all the way, just so it's super solid, doesn't wobble around at all. And there's really no point in utilizing that quick detach feature without having multiple collars, or whatever you want to call them. So that's it's set up. This is for small incremental changes, and I will show you how to do that. First of all, just for video's sake, we'll start it off like this, just so I can show you the process here. Okay, so now depending on what method we want to do in terms of filling our cases, we do want a lamp, by the way, close to our powder charges so we can see inside the case. But depending on if we use the scoop method or the powder charge method or the powder thrower method, we're going to need different tools here. If we're doing the scoop, we're going to definitely need this on a regular basis, a funnel, and a setup here. So let's show you the basic sort of way to do it first, and then I'll show you the powder throw once you get your basic load data down and you get a powder charge that you're satisfied with. So this is the setup, the initial setup for this particular scale. It's a Range Max. You can get it at Bass Pro Shops. I think some other shooting stores as well. You can just get probably a regular small digital scale, and it'll do fine. Anyway, so let's open this bad boy up, and when we turn it on, it'll automatically zero. It'll take some time, so we'll turn it on and set our baseline. So now, anytime we add any weight to this, it'll show. And you do want to make sure that you know, when you lift it off, it's pretty close each time. It's at 109.3. 109.3, just to make sure like your scale is not having static issues, and make sure that things read the same every time, just to see like that. That shouldn't have happened. So we have some issues here with this scale, which it's not a huge deal, but if you're wanting ultimate accuracy, you want your scale to work with you as much as possible. Anyway, let's say you needed to use something else. All you do is push the tare button, and then you re-zero it for whatever else you're using, and then So make sure and check what units you're on too. I mentioned this earlier in the video, but double check. Make sure you're on grains, because it's very important to use the grain system when you're reloading, because it's what everything is based on pretty much. Okay, that's how to set it up. Let's move on. Okay. So you want to make sure and do the same powder throw every time, just to make sure you are consistent as possible, even though the powder throw might not be. So I usually don't have this much difficulty, in all honesty. It could be due to some static electricity I've got going on the scale. Could be static electricity from the powder. Those are all factors. But okay, so for this video, this is going to be close enough. We actually don't need this scale any longer until we double check a little bit further on. So we need to just mate it up to the mouth here of the funnel, or the and just do it as consistent of a powder charge as you can. Okay, and then we're going to move on to these the whatchamacallit. So one thing that I like to do when I'm starting off, if I'm doing sort of a test load, if I'm doing both hand loads and powder throw, is I'll mark which ones the powder throw are, or what ones are like PT powder throw, something like that. Put them in a separate bag or something like that, just to separate them. So we're just doing the same thing with the powder throw here. Doing full strokes, just like we're doing full strokes with the press. And now with I do want to show you something actually before I get started. Now I installed this little plate. This is a steel plate on the back of my throw, or my the back of my press, just so I can always, even if I have to go all the way for whatever I'm doing, I can always have the same point, stopping point. I just wanted to show you that little tidbit there. So after you've loaded up quite a few rounds, I'm not going to load up a ton more here on this video, because you kind of get the point, I think. You can check your overall lengths. Just kind of take a batch, take a random one, and let's see, make sure your calipers are zeroed first of all, and you want to get, so that's pretty close to what I want. 21. There's a couple different readings depending on where I sit on the case, all within acceptable tolerances for what I'm loading for. Sorry, the flash just died. Anyway, I'm going to finish up this video. Do double check everything, and once you get maybe 5 or 10 rounds in, double check your powder measurements with your scale, and double check everything. And you have one more step after this. This would chamber and fire in most guns, but you do want to crimp, especially for a semi-automatic, such as an AR-15. If you're loading for bolt action, it might not be so essential to crimp at this point, because you can kind of determine how hard the bolt hits the round. But I do want to make note of that. So I hope you did enjoy this video, and I hope it was informative. If you need 2. You may ask any questions, and I'll be happy to answer anything. And stay tuned for part 6. Thank you for watching.